Right, coterminal angles. They are angles that end with each other. Right? So there are angles that end with each other. Terminal meaning end, co meaning with. So they're angles that end with each other. So if I look at this for a minute, 45 degrees is right there. If I went all the way around the circle, this direction, then I added 360 degrees. And if I add 360 to 405, that's going to be the same thing as 405 degrees. So they end at the same place. I probably shouldn't put an equal sign. But those are called coterminals. They end at the same place. Now, if I do the other direction, which is a little bit different, and I went this direction instead, I went clockwise. If I went this direction to get there, then that's going to subtract 360. And so if I took 45 degrees and subtracted 360, then I would get 315 degrees. And so these three angles are called coterminal. They're three different angles, but they all end at this exact same place right there. And that's what we're going to look at today, is trying to find angles that end at the same place. So I'm going to look at radians first. So I want to find a coterminal that's between 0 and 2 pi. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of ignore the pi a couple times and just say, hey, forget it's there. Because I know the pi is going to be in my answer. So I'm just going to ignore it for a minute. So I'm going to ask myself, is 23 over 4 between 0 and 2? Now, most people are like, Mr. Hyde, I hate fractions. That's good, because we're going to use technology anyway. Right? Oh, look, you caught me watching Star Wars. All right, so here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 23 divided by 4, and I'm going to put it in my calculator. Now, this is the Desmos calculator. So this is the exact same calculator we use on Edge Elastic. You can also do the same thing with your TI-30. There's an FD button that changes to fractions, or you can take 23 divided by 4, and you'll see it gives you 5.75. And I'm going to keep subtracting 2 until it's between 0 and 2. So I subtract 2, I get 3.75. I subtract 2 again, and now I get 1.75. So that's going to be my answer. It's going to be 1.75, which is between 0 and 2. Now, I want radians to always be in fractions, so I can definitely change 1.75, but I can also use my calculator. And if you look in that blue section over there, if I just tap it, you can see me changing it the color from dark to white. It'll change it to a fraction back to a decimal. So I'm going to change it to 7 over 4. So now I know that 23 over 4 subtracted 2 twice is going to be 7 fourths. So I can come back for a minute and say that this is going to be 7 pi over 4. And that's going to be my coterminal. All right, so this means that wherever 23 pi over 4 is, if I went around the circle twice, I would end up back at 7 pi over 4, which is between 0 and 2. And you'll see why later on why we would do that. Now, down to the negatives in the bottom, same kind of idea. So this problem is negative. So I'm going to put a negative 23 over 4. I'm going to make sure that cursor is on the outside of the fraction now. So instead of subtracting 2, because I want it to be between 0 and 2, this is negative. I'm going to add 2 this time. It's still negative. I'm going to add 2 again. Still negative. I'm going to add 2 again. And now that I see it's between 0 and 2. I'm going to change it to a fraction. And I know it's 1/4. So I can come back here and say my answer is going to be 1 pi. 1 pi over 4. All right. So keep in mind, anytime it's radians, I'm going to add 2 pi or I'm going to subtract 2 pi until it's between 0 and 2. All right. That's the hard part. Degrees is much easier. All right. I want it between 0 and 360. So I'm going to take 1200. And since 1200 is greater than 360, I'm going to subtract 360. All right. I'm going to go back to my calculator because I don't like to do math in my head. So I'm going to take 1200 minus 360. If it lets me actually touch the buttons. Keep subtracting it. Keep subtracting it. And there we go. So it's 120 is going to be between 0 and 2 pi. So 1200 and 120 are two different angles, but they end up being at the same place when they end. So I get 120 is coterminal with 1,200. All right, I'm going to do the same thing with negative 875. I'm going to come to my calculator. I'm going to put in negative 875. And now I'm going to add 360 since it's negative. I'm going to add 360 again. I'm going to add 360 again. And so I get 205. So now I come back and I know that 205 is a coterminal with negative 875. So with degrees, I'm either going to add 360 or I'm going to subtract 360 until they're between what I want them to be. And in radians, I'm going to add 2 pi or I'm going to subtract 2 pi. And that's what coterminal is.